live for our interview with Kristie. And what I'm most excited about is the fact that when you cross somebody's path at one point in life and then you circle back, it's even more exciting. And I remember Kristie from my husband, and we circled back this last, oh my gosh, it's only been, probably 10 days, almost 2 weeks,
Yeah. Yeah.
that we were at a networking event, and I knew she looked familiar. Or no, your name looked familiar
And
because,
that's how I knew you was your name.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I believe when I ended up talking to Mark, he had said something about how you had serviced him in Unigraphics and he only had two people who ever took care of him, you and someone else. And I think I remember when you were leaving, and there were so many things like we even talked about purchasing your house, I think, or looking for a house near you. It was way more than the normal service side. And she lives across from where we took Lucy to her preschool. So it was one of those things where it's cool when you've come across somebody and you know that you're meant to connect, and also know that there's more behind the scenes. And that's why we get to be here today, because there's incredible women among us that are pursuing life in such a beautiful way and can be so inspiring. And that gives you that reminder that you can do more than you realize, and you can take the inspiration from those around you and be available to empower yourself to make those brave steps and be more courageous and do what you need to do for your greater good. And so Kristie's here today to share her story of where she has come from, her journey, what she gets or wants to share that hopefully leaves you in a better place. Because my goal is that we inspire to take action so that you're better today than you were yesterday. And so, would you mind sharing more about you, where you've been, what you've been working on, and tell us more about you?
Sure. Oh, thank you, Maggie. This is so great. And it is. It's really cool when paths cross again. And I, just in thinking back, like when I knew Mark from my corporate days, right? And the years that have passed and kind of where things are now. And that seems like a lifetime ago. It's definitely a different person ago. And and it's crazy to think that like I could be on the other side of things talking about like my journey and maybe, somebody getting something out of it. Um, I know I, worked in corporate for about 25 years, and I thought that's all I ever wanted to do. I only wanted to work for somebody else so that I had a guaranteed paycheck, I had 401k, I had benefits, and I didn't have to think about anything. And and I kind of lived that life for a while. And then, even my now ex-husband, he left the corporate world. He started his own business, and he was only able to do that because I had a steady paycheck. And but seeing him get that freedom was as a family really really nice, right? Like if I needed him to go do something, he could do it. Um, but that's not always how the story ends. And I ended up leaving that company, where I knew your husband, Mark, after 16 years. I knew that I was just done growing there. There wasn't any room for promotion. um, it had changed hands, and honestly the vibe was different. um, Towards the end, they weren't so much an automotive company anymore. It was very male dominated. And as I started having kids, they're just, when I would say, I'm ready for the next step. Now you need to you need to focus on your family. Um, and that was hard. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? You're right. You're right. That's what I need to do. But kind of the last sale that the company went through, I really knew that I was not going to go any further. And so I left. Um, and and honestly, I should have left a few years before that. Um, hey, in the spirit of full transparency, right? It had even gotten to a point where, like, at a holiday party, we had an incident that I had to take to HR, between a male coworker and myself, and it involved drinking and things like that. And long story short was, what what do you want us to do? So someone had too much to drink, and and I was living in that culture where I didn't feel like anybody even had my back anymore. Like, I came to you with something that happened, and you're kind of just saying, what do you want me to do about it? And so those things are hard. And it was time to move on for sure and just put that behind. But also had, honestly, it had kind of started a rift in my own personal life, like between my husband and I at the time. Um, and so I thought by moving jobs, that probably would take care of some things at home, right? That would calm some situations and whatnot. And so I ended up leaving and I went to General Motors. I did have a job there that I loved. Um, and I was there for about 2.5 years. And kind of during this period, also, then, yeah, I went through a divorce, a very nasty divorce. And a month after my divorce was final, I ended up losing my job from GM. And it was really devastating. And it actually came about through misuse of company phone. Um, yeah. And I was really like, I rarely, it's only been recently that I'll even talk about it. Um, because I was so, like, it was so embarrassing to me. But basically, as I'm going through this divorce, my now ex-husband is like listening in on my phone, my personal phone, things like that. And he had a lot of control over that. So I started using my work phone as my personal phone. And it's something that a lot of people, probably 90%, but because I actually got turned in for it, and by my ex, and they asked me if I knew what the policy was, and I said yes, and I lost my job, and it was devastating. Um, and so, but in true fashion here, like, we're going to pick up the pieces and we're going forward, and that's what I did, and I ended up finding another job. Um, and it was a tech startup, and it was cool. The technology was cool. The people were great. And 10 months later, I lost my job again. And that was, they had lost some funding. Um, and, they were small to begin with. And so, they just eliminated, you know, 15 people. But, like, what was worse than losing my job is, like, how it was done. I got a call after hours with my daughter in the car and on camera, so it was just a meeting, like a normal meeting. And my boss looked at me and he's like, "Oh, your daughter's in the car." I said, "Yeah." And then HR happened to get on at that same time, and I knew. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me right now?" And so it was devastating to have to talk about that, like, to my daughter. And so, yeah, so here I was. I had worked for the same company, right, for over 16 years. And then in the course of a year, I lose my job twice. And you want to talk about humiliation and shame, that it was horrible. Um, I had nothing left, right? And here, I'm trying to take care of three kids, and yeah, and so I kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship, little by accident, a little by I wasn't sure what I was going to do for my next step. And so I kind of got into merchant services. And I was lucky enough to do it, though, in a way um, where it's not big company. It's, I have there, I work with somebody who has run this company for 16 years. So, and it just kind of felt right. So while you have a company that backs you, you really are a solopreneur, right? There's no, um, you're out there figuring it out. And I went from being a product manager where I work with developers and, I run consulting groups and stuff like that. So I'd always like fixed the problems that sales created. That was like, that's been my job for 20 years. And now I'm in sales. And I, it was so difficult. It's not my personality. Um, it's been a journey over the last year. But, I don't think I would be where I'm at if I didn't go through this, right? And sometimes like you've been kicked, right? You've definitely been kicked down and you're like, can I take any more? And when you think it can't get worse, it does. Um, but when you're on the other side of it, you realize that like you kind of had to go down those paths. Um, but yeah, I did not plan on doing this. The nature of merchant services is kind of, we um, provide point of sales, machines, credit card terminals, making it easier for merchants to get paid in a very cost effective way. But you're also coming into this industry that has a lot of bad players. And so honestly, I really thought I would just do it kind of as a side hustle until I landed back in corporate again. I really did think I would go back. Um, but what I figured out was after I stopped being so scared to walk into a networking event or into a door to talk to a business owner, that like there's some really cool stuff. There's some really cool people that I've met. So like for me, even my first networking event. So I joined, so here I'm like, okay, there's kind of a couple ways to go about merchant services, right? Like we do a lot of door knocking where we, go into businesses and talk to them and networking. And so for me, networking was the lesser of two evils. And I sign up, for the chamber. And I go to my first networking event and I sit in my car for 45 minutes. Yeah. And so I sat there and I sat there and I'm like, I don't think I can do this. And finally I did go in. I didn't know anybody and I'm standing in line to grab like a glass of wine. And the woman in front of me turns around and she starts talking to me about how much she hates these events, but she's trying to push herself into going. And I'm like, me too. And it turns out she's a bookkeeper and she had businesses that she works with where she knew like their situation with their credit card provider was really bad. And it ended up being a sale for me. Um, I know. And I'm like, oh my gosh, exactly. And so I kind of really went all in on the networking piece. And networking is awesome. And the people I've met in my network have like become my work family in a strange sort of way. And and I love it. I still love networking. And I actually, after that, like I still had a lot of anxiety. It still took me time, but now I can walk in and I'm lucky because I do know a lot of people, but now I like kind of search the room and I look for those outliers, right? The other people that are going through that. And and I love that. And that's kind of been more my mission. I think, the sales part happens, right? But I think my bigger calling is the people, is the community. Like when I meet somebody, I automatically think, okay, who can I match them with? Like who could either they help or help them? That's where my brain goes immediately. But but I went all in. I joined like 5 chambers. I know. And I spread myself. Yeah. So
Oh, I'm
um
on mute. I'm like, you joined five? What?
yeah.
Five at the same time?
Within a couple months of each other. Yeah.
You are
And
all in, sister. I'm
yeah.
impressed.
Yeah. But then what I found out happened is I was spread too thin. I would go to like 4 or 5 networking events in a day. And at the end of the day, and I'm an introvert at heart. At the end of the day, I was so mentally drained.
Mhm.
I had nothing left to give. Um, and also networking is a long game. The relationships that you build early take 6 to 9 to 12 months to fully, come together. And I have bills now. And so that was tough too. So finally, though, I had to accept that, you know what, I'm gonna have to go business to business.
Mhm.
And and kind of the same thing, would happen. I would sit out in my car, except it was worse. I'd sit out in my car for like 2 hours before yeah.
Hey, at least you admit it. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like somebody is going, "Oh, I thought it was just me."
yeah.
No, no. We all have that moment, and then it becomes a minute and two and three and a half hour, an hour, and then the worst that we have now is this thing that it can go, you know,
Yes, and suck up. Yeah, before you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, I just lost 30 minutes of my life.
yes.
Uh, yeah. And so, you know, and I honestly, I spent probably 6 months like between the networking and living in fear of sales. I did that for 6 months. And then I kind of financially hit rock bottom. And I'm like, okay, the reserves that I have are gone. I am getting some residual, money that's coming in. That's great. But I should be a lot further than where I'm at. And the only person I have to blame is me. And that was really eye-opening. So like when you think you can't get lower, like I said, I had kind of faced my fear of network. I faced my fear of door to door. But like it gets worse, right? And I had made some bad, you know, decisions about trusting some people too much, and it came back and kind of bit me. So that's when I finally kind of really had to go all in and just put it all out on the line or get back to work. Um, And I don't know, we're frozen.
Oh no, you're good.
Oh, okay, you are totally frozen.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. It might have been my
Oh,
internet. I love technology. It's amazing when it works.
so
Aw.
anyway, but yeah, so that was kind of like that rock bottom when for the first time in 20 years you missed your mortgage or you missed your car payment or you missed them both. That sucked.
Hmm.
That was really my lowest. And even people telling me, what are you doing? Go back, grow up and go back to work. Like that hurt, but like when I missed my, those other things, that really hurt.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of questioning and there's a lot of, um, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? And, even like for me, I went back to back to therapy and, and she said, I was like, hey, could you help me with some meds or something like that? And she's like, no, you need to climb out of this on your own.
Mm.
And I'm super thankful, right?
Hmm. Right.
And she was
Harder, but less side
harder,
effects.
harder, but she's right.
Hmm.
Um, at the end of the day, I am the only one that can control what's going to happen. And and that's hard, but it's also when the wins come in, it's really fulfilling.
Hmm.
And so some of the really cool stuff that's happened along the way is just like the the people I've met along the way that I never would have met in a corporate life, right? I feel like in corporate, you're kind of everybody's just trying to lay low. They're trying to stay under the radar and not lose their job. You don't ever want to be weak. You don't want to be that one that can get picked off.
Hmm.
And like here, all of a sudden, like I'm in rooms with women especially, that are just ready to like put it all out there. Um, you know, I met somebody just a few weeks ago and she was talking about like her divorce and how she ended up homeless. And like I I just was like, I can't even imagine. Um, but like I learned so much from her and her story and like her willingness to be vulnerable. And so that's really kind of special. And you know how people turn these things around and then they open their business or they take their last, you know, $50 or whatever, and then they turn it into something amazing.
Mhm.
And you only get that, I think, when your back's up against the wall.
And the willingness to take the next leap or I shouldn't even say leap, but it sometimes it feels like a leap, but that step.
Yeah. And, you know, like as I look back, you know, I don't ever regret getting divorced. We had a good run. We had 20 years. We've got three amazing kids. Um, we we work all right on co-parenting. We're doing better. But we had a very, very like bad, you know, stretch. And you know, it's I ended up using services I never thought I'd have to use. You know, I ended up going to La Casa, which is an amazing resource for women, but those are things like that only other people used. I
Hmm.
didn't think that would be for me. Um, and I'm so thankful like those resources are there. And having people to talk to where like where there's been, you know, women feel like there's a lot of shame, but like you could kind of come together and be open about things, and realize that more of us are going through this than what we talk about.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it's crazy. I would have told you, you know, 6 months after my divorce that like my life would have been 110% better. Um, I thought that was the answer to all my problems. But I think um, I think a lot of it is that it just cleared some noise maybe out of my way.
Hmm.
I know that's kind of a weird way to say it, um, but I really like had to burn it all down to kind of figure out who I was again and move forward and rebuild. And I still like I probably still only like rebuilt the basement at this point. You know, there's a lot more to go, but um it's a good it's a good journey. It's a really good journey.
Well,
And
it's
so
super inspiring because so many women they face these challenges and they think that this is the best it'll ever get,
mhm.
and
Yeah,
it's not.
right. And
Like,
I had this whole theory in my head. Like I live in my head like quadrants, right? And so I was always like, well, if 25%, you know, like is family and career and relationship and I don't know, stuff or luxuries, as long as three out of those four were good, didn't matter what the other, you know, that the other one could be crappy because hey, 75% is passing.
hmm.
And I just lived like that. And so, but it was always that one 25% relationship one that was not good.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, it was tough. It was really
Well,
tough.
I love how you talk about that because I think that what that really brings into is percentage and realizing that the only way to bring up the percentage is to focus in on the area that is adjusting the most. Because if you have this really great sales quadrant, say business is great,
Mhm.
awesome, no adjustments there, but then there's something over here that's not bringing it to a place of growth,
Right.
then it's a great awareness and
Yeah.
responsibility.
Oh, yes, let's talk about that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not, adulting is not fun, but I do, you know, I think now too, like with where I'm at. So yeah, so here I am, you know, trying something new. And I did, like for a whole year, I said, I'm gonna just say yes to everything that comes my way. Um, and it'll be uncomfortable and it'll be hard and but it's a chapter, it's not like a whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I, realized that like my funds were dwindling a bit because I really needed to I was hiding too much behind the networking. But
Mm-hmm.
the nice thing is like now that I've been in here a year, my network is like really come full circle and I'm very thankful for that. Um, but yeah, the hard work is to get out and do what you're supposed to do every single day, right? And so like figuring out how many conversations I need to have in a day, um, getting some pretty thick skin. So in my business, um, yeah, it's a lot of cold calling. And in like I said, it's an industry that there's a lot of high turnover. There's a lot of bad players. And so when you walk in and I'll say, something like, hey, and I try to be funny, hey, yes, this is a cold call. Yes, I am going to talk about the thing you don't want to hear, and that's your credit card processing. And people will, laugh and kind of just, let their guard down. But, there are some people I can read a room really fast, and know that this is not my stop. And I just leave a card and move on. But um, the ones that stick with me the most are ones that I've learned like not to judge, not to think you know the answer to their problems, um, and listen. And so like for, you know, and I think when I became like not a salesperson and I became a problem solver, um, it changed my outlook on sales. It changed just how I approach everything. And that's kind of how I wanted to build my business after that. So, one of my very first sales that I made, I walked in and the owner was at the desk and he said, "Oh, it's you people." And I'm like, wow. Um, okay. And so he's like, "Oh, you guys come in here all the time and you try to get me to switch and blah blah blah." And he goes, "But if you come back tomorrow, I'll give you my statement." Because that's how we typically, we always like to have a statement so we can kind of see what's going on. And if there's, if you're going in, to try to save them money, and that's usually the path of least resistance, right? To get someone's attention is, hey, I can save you money. But this has also grown a lot more beyond that. And I came back like three more times and he still didn't have it. Finally, I got the statement and we sat down and I said, okay, well, there's two options. We can talk about passing the fee on to your customers, which you're starting to see a lot more. It's called dual processing, or we can reduce some of your fees. I said, I can save you like $4,000 a year. And here I am thinking, like, that's a lot of money. And he's like, well, I'm not passing the fee on. And $4,000 isn't enough for me to change. And I'm like, what? So, you know, and I belong to this like coaching through like one of the chambers put me through a coaching thing. And I'd come in every week and I'm like so frustrated, right? And I'm giving up. I don't want to, I'm just not going to go back there anymore. And I had a coach who he's like, but has he truly told you no? Did he truly tell you no yet? I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
no. And then he's like, then you keep going back. And I think especially as women, like we don't want to interrupt people's day. We don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. We don't want to bother people. And that was always what was going on in my head. And, thankfully, this person stayed behind me for a long time. And this particular business owner ended up calling me back. And he's like, I got a problem. And he said, Michigan's now requiring paid time off and an increase for minimum wage. And he's like, I've got like an $80,000 gap that I need to cover. And so I said, well, we've talked about this, right? I said, the answer is you pass the fee and you can probably get back about $60,000 of it. So first of all, like to spend $60,000 a year on credit card processing is insane. It's a lot
Mhm.
of money. Um, but he was so afraid. He's like, I just feel like we're going to lose customers. And I said, you got to trust me on this. And we can always flip it, right? Nothing's in stone. And so anyway, we ended up doing that. The alternative was he raises price for everybody, or he just raises his price, really for his credit card users. So you always have a choice to use cash. But I went in, I did the install, um, did all the training, came back a little while later, and I walk in the door, and the girl at the front desk comes running to me, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're the credit card girl." She's like, I know. She gave me a hug and she's like, "We love you." And I'm like, "What? No one loves the credit card girl, please." And so I said, "Well,
$60,000, love.
yeah." And so she said, "No." She's like, "You don't understand like what's happened." And I said, "Okay, well, tell me." And so she's like, "We used to spend 2 hours at the end of the night trying to like do all the settlements, right? Like with tipping and things like that." She's like, because I had automated that for them and I automated the tipping. And she's like, "Yeah, we're here for 10 minutes now at the end of the night." And I was like, "You went from almost 2 hour and a half, 2 hours, and now it's 10 minutes." So she's like, "Yeah, we love it." And she's like, "Also, our staff is getting tipped more. Like the tips are better because we made it easier." And so she's like, "So people are making more money." And like kind of what was going through my head is like this ripple effect. Um, so here I am, I'm just selling, credit card services, but really like the deeper I thought about it, I'm like, wow, what if somebody like gets to go take their family on an extra vacation this year? Or, some gets to do something special with their family because I made a simple adjustment up here and it just trickles down. I thought
Mhm.
that was really cool. Um, and then I said, "Well, do you think you lost customers?" And she's like, "We lost a couple." And she goes, "But here's the thing." She goes, "It was the ones that we wanted to leave anyway." She's like, "These were customers that were rude to our staff. They always complained about anything and everything." And she's like, "This was like that, just enough to like make them go away without having to tell them to go away." And so it was like this big win-win. Um, And so I think when I started to view my business like that, everything changed. Um,
Major shift.
yeah. And now I look at like all the people, like I can walk into their business and like I can ask about their kids or, and it's become almost like I said, like kind of like this community. I typically, most of my customers are within, about a 30-minute drive of me. I have others out there, but um, if something goes wrong, yes, I have, 24/7 US based support, but I always say, just call me first. And, sometimes it's just, "Hey, we ran out of paper. By chance, do you have an extra roll?" "Yep, I'm just down the street. I'm finishing up, dinner with my kids or something like that." And my kids come with me a lot of times. And so they get to see, businesses too. And I like being able to help out like that. And it's,
So good.
yeah. And so that's kind of been a lot of like the driving force. Um, Even like I said, not judging. So what works for one business, right? Like, this particular business said 4,000 isn't enough for us to change. Um, I have another one that I walked into that um I could only save them like $40 a month. I'm like, there's no way, and so I kind of didn't go back to follow up with them for a while. And when I did go back in, they're like, "We've been waiting for you to come back." And I was like, "Really?" And so I said, "Well, here's the thing." I said, I the savings are about 40 a month. And to them, it wasn't even about the savings. It was like other things. So like, we do next day funding. Um, the current provider they were with, they weren't getting their money for like 3 or 4 days. And
Mm.
that was the big thing for them.
Mhm.
And that was something I hadn't even considered. And so like, I think every business teaches me a lesson. Um, and that's cool. Yeah. Like I can't, it's not right for me to put my beliefs onto you and your business.
Hmm.
So all
Yep.
I can do is, follow up and present the information. And, if you tell me I'm not the right person for you, before that would have been devastating. My ego couldn't handle it, but now it's fine. You
Hmm.
know, I'm not meant for everybody.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, that's kind
I
of
love it. That's so
where I'm at.
exciting. I love it. Well, the stories, like you said, the personal reflection, the mirror of, you know, what might be not enough for one, something more is another, but also that service, you know? I was actually with my hairdresser last night and he was talking about putting together a new program, communication, CRM behind the scenes. And I was like, oh, that was a big deal. And he was like, no, it really wasn't. This is way better, same price. But I didn't, he just hadn't taken the time to
Yes,
see and compare really what was missing. And so, how many times in business is it the fear of, oh, it's going to be so much work, where that's where you come in. You
right,
customize everything, you clarify it all, you take the brunt of it all to say, oh, and let me explain this part that another company may not have even cared about. So,
right. And and that is one of the things, like I said, that's at the end of the day, like for me, um, I think that's kind of what keeps me going, right? Is sometimes I'm just switching out like a basic terminal, right? And so I go in, like for example, I did one yesterday where I was just doing an install and I go in and switch the machine over. It takes 5 minutes, show them how to use it really quick. But he's got all of these beautiful photos, like nature photos all over his office, and then it ends up being where we're talking about his photography, which I love. I do photography on the side, right? And I was there for like almost another 50 minutes, um, talking photography. Um, it's now going to be one of those things like he goes up to Kensington all the time. And so he's like, in the spring, let me, I'll give you a call and let's go shoot together. And I love that. Right. So what
oh,
starts off as like credit cards turns into now like I have a photography buddy. Um, I think that's so cool. And, it just, I've run into people where turns out our kids are in the same class together. Um, you just don't know who you're gonna, run into or find. And that's kind of the fun part of it. But yeah, I think a lot of it too is like, for example, I walked into a place the other day and I said, when's the last time you even looked at your statement? Because honestly, like as a business owner, when you think about what you're paying in processing, it's probably 2 to 4% of your total sales. That's a lot. And a lot of people don't look at it like that. They just accept it that that's the cost of doing business. But it's also a really easy way to like boost your profit margin just by, you know, looking for ways to save money on that. Um, but this particular person is paying 8.74%, which is insane. And I'm like, when's the last, I asked, like, do you not look at this? Because it's costing him like $1,500 a month, just throwing money away by not looking at something like that, like just let's bury our head in the sand.
right.
Um, and so, yeah, it's crazy to me. But then like I go back in and like I feel like I've solved a problem. Like I don't know how to fix cars. Um, but I do know how to fix this. And I like that. And same thing, like I've got restaurants that I do full point of sale and they'll say to me, well, are you just going to drop off the machine and leave? I'm like, why would I do that? Like, I'm going to set up your menu. I'm going to train your staff. I'm going to stay with you as we launch this. We're going to make sure, we're going to build out a plan. I would never just throw this at you and expect you to get through it. And so I like, just doing that, right? And it's service. Um, you do what you're good at, and I'll do what I'm good at, and you can keep on ringing your cash register, and I'll take care of these things for you.
Behind the scenes, the systems, the systems,
The
the systems
systems.
make such a difference.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. I love it. Oh my goodness. Such insight, experience, and that journey that it wasn't pretty. That, so many times on social media, I always laugh to think that people think one thing, and then there's this giant amount of story that's behind that
Oh,
people will
yeah.
never know. You know what I mean? You just keep
Right.
going because you're not going to stop and talk about some of those things.
Right.
You would if someone asked, I'm sure, to a certain degree if you trusted them.
Yeah.
Yet, it's not for everyone.
Right.
We talk a lot in our Worthy Collective about how we get a test and then it becomes the lesson. And then there's that spot for refinement that's like sometimes we just sit in the lesson and we're like, oh, I learned this and I learned that. I'm like, okay, great, but what's the refinement of true opportunity? And that's where you shifted. You shifted
Right.
into what's in it for them.
Right. And I do think when you do the right thing, um, the people will find you, your network will come through for you. People that you've done work for refer you out. And that's the true, test, right? Of are you doing what you're supposed to be doing?
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, like I'm not, I belong to different merchant services groups on Facebook. And yes, it's a field that is not pretty. There's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of people that are just in it for money. They don't do right by the merchant or their people because, they just figure that, oh, it, it'll take them months to figure it out. Well, for me, like it doesn't do me any good. I'm very community focused, right? I live in this community, I shop here. If I see you out on the street, the last thing I want you to do is like say, hey, you did something wrong. You really screwed me over. Um, I want to keep you a customer for life, right? Having to go out and find new businesses is a lot of work.
Mhm.
Um, but if I can keep you happy because I knew I did the right thing by you, like to me, that's what keeps business going. Um, and like I said, I don't think I ever realized all of that in my corporate life. Like I think in like this corporate life, like here I am, I was working at GM or wherever. So, you work for corporate, you eat at corporate, you shop at corporate. And granted, I shop at Target and whatnot. But like now though, I realize that if I spend $10 at Target or I spend $10 on Main Street, it means a lot more on Main Street than it does at Target.
It does.
And I didn't have that perspective.
Mhm.
And I think I do now, for sure. And I'm always trying to think about, okay, who in my network could I use
Mhm.
instead of, going, I don't know, to Target or whatever. Um, I'd much rather do that, like even for like Christmas gifts and things like that. Um, it's really important to think about that. And so, like the shop small thing, like it's a big deal. But I know like on the other hand, when we're talking like shop small, I'll walk in places and they're like, shop local, shop small, but then they're using Square. And so, and so that's always kind of an interesting conversation. But like I said, it's to each their own. You know what's right for your business. But I love having conversations about it, and there's no sales pitch. It's always just a conversation.
Mhm.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Everything starts with a conversation because in the conversation, there's connection. So
right.
good.
Yeah.
So tell us, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned on your journey of success, both in life and business, that you wish more women knew?
You know, I think it's that you're worth it, right? That
Mm. Mm.
I know. And there were times when I didn't think I was like worthy of success or worthy of, even taking next steps or opportunities. Um, take the opportunities that are given to you because you do get some freebies along the way, right? Like sometimes people will step into your path and they can they can change the entire trajectory.
Hmm.
Um, take advantage of those because the people that put themselves there like truly do mean it, that they want to help you out. Um, I always thought, no, I can't afford that right now, or I can't, I don't have anything to give them back. So I'll just ignore the call or I won't call them back because they don't really mean it.
Hmm.
People that want to help you will, truly want to help you. And it's not even about paying them back some way. Sometimes it's just about doing it for somebody else when the time's right. Just
Hmm.
I just think that's a lot of it. But get up, get moving. Yes, you're allowed to feel sorry for yourself once in a while.
Once in
Uh,
a while, just once in a while,
once
not
in a
for
while,
a long
not every
time,
day.
not for a
Yeah.
year.
Don't sit in it. Don't sit in it for long. Um, but we all have a journey and we all have a story to share. Um, and 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 it's worth it, right?
Hmm. It is.
And it's
It's so worth
ugly and
it.
it hurts
Gosh.
and but we're all on on this journey to be our best selves.
Hmm. So good. Such good information. What would you say? How do you balance ambition and rest, ensuring that you stay aligned with your values and avoid burnout?
Yeah. I have to be careful about that too because so I do like I have ADHD and I didn't know that until later in life. And so I've actually just over the last couple of years really started to figure that out because I can burn out so fast. And so I try to really listen to my body. Um, I try to do a lot of time blocking.
Hmm.
I know when my brain works the best
Hmm.
and I set that time up. For when I need to get like the most important stuff done, right? So whether it be, um, sales related things, because hey, we all have bills to pay. Um, and so it's trying to listen to my body and schedule the most important things during the times when I can function at my highest, go to sleep. Guess what? Like I know I have 37,000 things I didn't finish today, but if I don't get some sleep, it's even worse tomorrow.
Hmm.
So taking the rest that you need, um, and even like in my scheduling, um, as I'm building a business, should I be out there 5 days a week? Yeah, I should be. But I've learned now, like I take one day a week to just let it be my office day, let it be my home day, where I can, just get caught up, put some time in there for things I like to do because it's really hard, like with 3 kids, driving everybody around, sports, you know, it really can overtake everything.
Hmm. All the
It's
hats.
yeah, yeah.
So, is there anything that's crossed your heart that you haven't already shared that you think would be important for, I'd say, a person in general? Yet my focus is definitely more in the area of women when it comes to the interview with a wise woman. Um, is there anything that you feel like would be really important? Maybe it was advice that was given to you, or a practice, or something that you know now that you didn't know before?
I think that is like, I think it's almost like being like a little, not being afraid to be vulnerable. Um,
I mean, being vulnerable, like
yeah,
being
yeah,
willing to be vulnerable.
yeah,
Yeah.
being willing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Sorry.
no, no, I know what you're saying. I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
what you're
But
saying. And
you
it's,
know, and not being afraid to share your story because a lot of times, like when I was going through my, the end of my marriage and things like that, it was really, really tough. And now, like all of a sudden, and I had some really close friends that helped me through that. But like now, it's like I get to be that person that, like, I have some friends that are going through some really bad times. And I think by being vulnerable about talking about it and not living behind shame and things like that, um, it I get to be their support just like somebody was for me,
Mhm.
right? Um, and so that to me is, you know, people know they can come to me, but like if I shut down and I don't talk about those things, and even though, like I said, they at one time I was so embarrassed and things like that, but everybody has something.
Mhm.
And so
We're
like when I just put myself out there and I said, you know what, I did this stuff, or I've been through this stuff, people come to me, and they're like, hey, could we grab coffee? Um, and then I get to be, I get to help somebody out like somebody once helped me out.
Mhm. Oh, that's such a blessing. And also to know where a person might be, if it's similar or different, you know. But
Yeah,
yeah, that vulnerability, I think that those walls that we allow to adjust, and I don't want to say burst through and break through because it's a little like tap, like it was like you sitting in the car for that amount of time.
right.
You got out of the car. That was one part. You went through the doorway. Another part. You stayed. That's another part. You communicated. Another
Yeah,
level. Like there's so many levels to it. That's
right,
why it's not for everyone. It's not
right,
like everyone rolls out of bed like, yes, this is amazing. No, you may not have slept very well. You had dog issues, cat issues, animal issues, people issues, belly issues,
yes,
hair issues, like who knows? All those things that happen, and it can keep us from our next opportunity.
yeah.
And then asking more questions to have that conversation with others. I find that fascinating that somebody wants to shop local. I really think that there's some like taglines and things there because that's a really great point. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that,
yeah, it's, I get it too, right? And even like,
well, they don't know what they don't know until they
I
talk to you.
know. Yep.
Hmm.
Always good to have a conversation. But yeah, but yeah, just take the next step. And sometimes it's like you just said, um, like I might see a task as one big task, but really break it down into the smaller pieces and then give yourself credit for doing those small pieces, right? You got in the car today. You drove to the parking lot where you needed to be. Um, you exited the door. I was
Yeah.
even there were times even when I would like walk into a place I was gonna pitch and I would shop around there for like 10 or 15 minutes. Um, yeah,
Checking
and
out the energy, checking
yeah,
out, like, is this somewhere I really want to service?
hmm,
Because if you really ask for the right client in alignment, it will be clear that they're not, in
right,
the way they talk to each other and because
yeah,
it really does matter. Because if they're going to do that, they'll do it to you.
right, right.
Yeah.
And so and even as I was like building up courage, right, there were times I'd go and shop, like I'd shop around. I might even buy some stuff that I really didn't need, and then I'd leave. I'm like, oh, but then I'd go back tomorrow, and so it's all right. Like each of those steps are wins. Doesn't
Hmm.
all have to happen in one day. So
Hmm.
however you break that up into your life, right? Like celebrate that you got up today.
Hmm.
Tomorrow you're going to get up and you're going to shower.
Hmm.
And the
Yeah.
next day you're
Yeah.
going to get up, you're going to shower, and you're going to put makeup on.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yep. I'm gonna leave the house today. I said that at one point. I did a networking event last spring. I was like, I'm gonna put on real shoes because, like when you work from home, I've got slippers on right now. Like
Right.
I have slippers on,
Yep.
and going out the door with the kids might look like tennis shoes, but then an actual real, some
Mhm.
little dressier shoes.
I know. Put the good lipstick on today. It's okay.
Oh, that's true. I know. I was looking when we were doing, I was like, I have no good colors. I need to, I'm like, I might, yes. So was there anything else that crossed your heart that you would love to share?
Just, honestly, I think, especially since this is geared towards women, right? Like I find your sisters, find your women, find your people, but use each other and take care of each other. I think sometimes, women can be tough on each other and we're tough on ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, but really we're also we can be our biggest advocates too, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I think that's really important. Build your family, build your sisters, um, and then lean on each other, whether it be in business. Um, and a lot of times it does start to cross over,
Mhm.
and and that's good because I think we're really strong, right? Like when you think of women, like even from like a voting perspective or a spending, like family decisions, like we carry a lot more weight than what we ever give ourselves credit for.
Mhm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, God did give us the ability to do all the things and carry a baby.
That's right.
I mean,
So,
let's just talk about multitasking there. Not for a week, not for a month,
right.
you
For
know,
the rest of your life after that baby's born, right? So, I mean, my kids are 10, 14, and 15, and I'm still multitasking.
to the nth degree. Oh my Lord. Yes. So how can people get a hold of you? Because what you do is you help them save money. So it's a variety of different merchants, and that you can at least have that conversation to see what you can save them,
Sure.
or the system of what maybe is costing them more money
Hmm.
based on how it's closing out at the end of the night or
Sure,
day
sure.
or week.
Yeah, so so my company is Regal Payments. So I'm just Kristie at regalpayments.com. I am on, LinkedIn and, I'm always happy to answer questions. It doesn't even have to be sales related or anything, just questions. But yeah, I love sitting down and just having a conversation, about what processes you use, where are you spending a lot of time, where are you spending a lot of money? Let's just sit down and kind of figure it out. Or maybe what you're using right now is the best option for you,
Mhm.
but at least you'll
Yep.
know either way.
At least the comparison is fair. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yes, but
Yeah.
you should be looking at your processing statement every month, but at least once a year, right?
Mhm.
Because things can get, some companies sneak in, you know, technology fees and things like that. Again, I think because I'm, more of a small family type company, right? I don't own a big building that I have to pay for, so it's just, what you see is what you get. And I'm really proud to stand behind that.
So good. So good. It's so exciting. Hey, well, I am so grateful that we ran into each other. More so, I got out of the car because I had that moment where I was like, what am I doing? Do I really need to do this? I want to do this. I get to do this. And the connections and the ripple effect is far greater than we could ever imagine. Just like you walking in and talking to your client about his photography, it's more than a transaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So,
good.
no, I'm so thankful for this time, and just having our paths cross again.
Yay, so good, so good.
Yeah.